everybody. Welcome in on a Wednesday. Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. Time to talk with the coach, Jim Scarcelli, former Wolverine, who's on the line and ready to go. I know that because I've been talking with him right before we were going here. He's chomping at the bit. Scar, good to see you, man. What's going on?
Life is good. We got some great weather. We got, I know the guys this time of year, they're running and they are lifting. They are lifting. And I'm going to talk about the Gophers today of Minnesota. And to beat the Gophers, you better be big and you better be strong because they are a big, strong team. And we're going to get into the Gophers along with some other stuff today.
Oh, we're going to get into the Gophers. I have the brown jug put on the list of things that we are going to talk about. Also, Jim Scarcelli is going to look at the first half dozen games for the Wolverines in their 23 schedule, and he's going to rank them as the easiest and most difficult games, 1 through 6 or 6 to 1, whichever way he wants to go there. Scar will have a point or two to make about recruiting in June. Plus, he'll have a bonus selection. Just wait for that once we get close to the end of the show. We're going to start out with some film that Scar was able to find. And, maybe it's as easy as just typing in Jim Harbaugh's name and going through and, finding this video. But, Scar, I hadn't seen – admittedly, I don't go, searching through YouTube, looking for, sometimes I do, but, not this one. How did you find this video?
Danny, I was trying to find San Diego film when Harbaugh was coaching at San Diego. I wanted to see what he was doing. I couldn't find anything. I've seen all this stuff at Stanford, but I couldn't find anything from San Diego. Anyway, this video showed up of Jim presenting at a clinic, teaching quarterback play. And I was just really, really impressed with him as a teacher. All the little things, and you're gonna play a little bit of it. And I just know as a coach, as a head coach, and then you've got assistant coaches. You want guys that are good teachers. You want guys that explain things, that the players can understand, and they're thorough. They don't miss the little things. And I'm hearing Jim talk, and I'm like, man, this guy is thorough, and that's why you win. You win when you talk about the little things. You emphasize the little things because all those little things matter, and they will get you beat. Little things about technique, how you're teaching technique. So I was impressed with it. I say, you know what, Danny, maybe some of our listeners might want to listen to Jim for a couple minutes and let you have at it.
Yeah, and guess what, Scar? This is from the time when he was at San Diego. I watched the film this morning. I loved it. Like he's, talking about, hey, I'm the coach at San Diego. He's in San Diego. And he goes through a brief recap of where he's been in his coaching career previous to San Diego. He was with the Raiders, for 2 years, talking about being a quality control coach and then being able to sit in on the draft with Al Davis. And then, we know the rest of it's history, but, he starts out talking about throwing a football and just what you want to do. And he's so into it and animated when he's up there. And, some of the Harbaugh that you see now, 20 some odd years later, and the one you see here who's just getting going and coaching, he still has some of that because he has a visual aid and he goes to the Sandlot movie, which he doesn't remember the name of Sandlot, one of the great baseball movies of all time. But he goes to the ball gets hit under the outfield and the youngster goes over there and he's just hesitant to throw the ball in. So he runs it in. And the kid that ends up making it with the Dodgers in the movie says, hey, you got to stop thinking. You got to have fun. And you throw it like a newspaper. And then Harbaugh was telling everybody, who had a newspaper route? And nobody's hand went up. And he's like, you guys are all like, the quarterbacks. None of you guys had newspaper routes. He said, go home and get a newspaper and tie a rubber band around it. And then, when you throw it, that's how you throw a football. So I enjoyed that. And I think we'll give a little bit, you'll get a feel for Harbaugh and some of his coaching early on as, he was addressing the coaches that were assembled there in San Diego. And here he's talking about how to hold the football.
Basically, when I hold the ball, only fingers and that part of the thumb right there, and the thumb are touching the ball. The rest of the palm is off the ball. So check your quarterback's grip. And the way to check it is to find light in between the ball and the hand. Just come back, just take a look at it. Hey, show me your grip. Okay? Check it. Okay. You're not holding it in the palm. Now, if you see that, there's no light in between the palm and the ball, then he's got a problem. Secondly, you got to be able to hold it light. Loose grip, loose arm. You want that thing loose. You want levers working when you're throwing a football. You want to create levers in the throwing motion. Bam. Holding the ball too tight. He starts to feel his forearm tensed up. He starts to feel the bicep or the tricep while he's holding the ball. He's holding the ball too tight. Loose, like holding a bird. Hold a bird in your hand. Light grip, creates light arm. Now, where do you throw it from? Where do you throw a ball from? Some guys teach it's here. Some guys where do you guys teach it at? Up here, up high?
Right by the ear, right, Scar?
Elbow at the ear?
It sounds like he's
create a pretty over-the-top throwing motion. That's acceptable. The thing you're looking for is not where he's throwing it or where the elbow is. It doesn't have to be at the ear. It doesn't have to be anywhere but above the shoulder. As long as that elbow is above the shoulder, then you're in business. Anywhere from there to there, anywhere in between. And everybody throws it different. No one way to throw a football that's right. The thing you want, though, is extension. You want full extension in the throwing motion. So you can achieve that up here, right there, like Brett Favre would. Or you can achieve it out here, or kind of like a David Rivers gets it. As long as the elbow is above the shoulder, anywhere from there to there is full extension. Now, the elbow goes below the shoulder, you can't get full extension. If it gets below the shoulder, you lose extension. So guys will say, get your elbow up. Get your elbow up. Keep the elbow up. Just get it up over the shoulder. I learned that from Bill Walsh. So Bill Walsh used it.
Bill Walsh.
Not where it's at. It's that you get the extension. Now we got a guy, Todd Mortensen was our quarterback this year, and came from BYU.
Well, let me hear. As he was talking there, which was interesting is that I put a football myself and I looked, and I didn't see any space, from where I was throwing the football. And Jaden Davis, Michigan's incoming quarterback for the 24 class, the 5-star. There were some reviews on him, and the Adam Gorney from Rivals was doing a write-up on him, and he said, yeah, some of his throws, he was shooting it out there sidearm. So, what Harbaugh's talking about, where the release point, as long as your elbows above your shoulder kind of thing, those are all, I found that pretty fascinating.
Yeah, he mentions Bill Walsh often in this presentation, and Bill Walsh is the guy that he obviously spent some time with. He mentions Cam Cameron, who was a grad assistant and then became a position coach when I was playing, and Jim had him at Michigan. He mentions him a lot as a guy that he listened to, and he gives his quarterbacks, he gives them some some leeway there. He doesn't mandate that it has to be over the top. It has to be 45 degrees. He's like, everybody has a different throwing motion. I remember I was at a Michigan practice years ago. You remember Joe DeLamielleure, Denny, all-pro guard with the Buffalo Bills, blocked for OJ. He was there.
Electric company.
That's right. He was at practice. I never met him before. He's there. We're just BSing. We're talking football. And I remember talking to Joe DeLamielleure about stance. He was an offensive guard, stance. And I used to try to teach a certain foot, feet pointing straight ahead, this, that. And Joe DeLamielleure said to me, you know what? Have your guys jump up in the air and land. Wherever they land, that's how their feet are naturally. And then let the kid put his hand on, he was explaining to me just everybody's body type. Some guys are more pigeon-toed. Some guys are, in terms of what you mandate as a coach. And from that moment, I always was a little more flexible with mandating, in terms of teaching stance to my offense and defensive linemen. Every kid isn't the same. So when you listen to Jim present, he understands that every kid doesn't release the ball the same way. And I just like the way Jim is real easy to understand. I understand everything he's talking about. A player, a coach could be in front of him and understand it. And if I was hiring an assistant coach, I get the interview. That's one thing. I'd want to get some videotape of the guy at a clinic. If that would be really important for me, especially in even an athletic director looking to hire a head coach. You pop on that Jim Harbaugh San Diego video teaching quarterback. That's impressive. I was at a clinic one time listening to Nick Saban. I never forget this. 20 years ago. I forget where the heck I don't know where he was at that time, but everybody knew who he was. And he's talking, and I've been around football. And he's using words I don't understand what the hell he's talking about. Some of his terminology, and I'm like, okay, great, man. You got these. Just break it down so we can understand what the hell you're talking about. You're trying to sound like you're so damn intelligent, but you got to talk so your players understand what you're talking about. So I don't know if you wanted to show anymore, but yeah, I was impressed.
I do want to show another short clip. I was, so he was at San Diego there when he said he did mention. I watched the first few minutes. He mentioned Bill Walsh. He went through the coaches in his career like Ditka and Bowie mentioned and some others, but he mentioned Walsh a couple times. And I thought, well, when he went to Stanford, it's probably when he worked with Walsh. But Walsh passed away the year that Harbaugh was the head coach there. So I was wondering at what point would Harbaugh have crossed paths with with Walsh? Maybe when he was in San Diego or something like that.
Well, his dad was an assistant at Stanford way back. Jim spent a lot of time in Stanford, and then he was with the Raiders in Oakland as a analyst, whatever the heck he was. So
which is right there by Stanford.
That's right. So he would have been a guy that would have reached out to try to learn. I know Jim, he's out there trying to learn any way he can.
I like it. All right. So he talked about the grip, and here he is talking about you're like a pitcher. You use your legs, legs, chest, hip. All right. Legs, hip, chest, shoulder. He's going through it a little bit here. And this is a little bit of a shorter clip of Jim Harbaugh back when he was coach at San Diego. And he's giving what he calls CPs, coaching points, right, Scar?
That's it.
I figured that one out myself, all by myself. All right, here he is. Let's play a little bit.
Tell my guys, hip to shoulder. They know what they're doing. They got to bring it at the target. He should feel the sensation when he throws that he's coming off a pitcher's mouth. He should feel like he's coming down off a pitcher's mouth. He's throwing downhill. Everything is throwing downhill. If he's throwing here, or he's throwing with that foot already off the ground, or he's throwing back here, and not getting the right side through, I feel like I'm throwing uphill. I feel like I'm throwing up in the stance, If I get it, then I feel like I'm throwing downhill. Another way to reinforce that, see on the coach. And so many times, like a quarterback, they're all like that. They all want to throw just with the arm. No body comes through. Hit me. Don't hit me really bad. Stop about right there. If you really want to hit me, I can do it. Bam, load it up the back leg. See that? Load it up. But that punch came from right down there. It came from the leg. It came from the hip. It came from the hip. It came from the shoulder. Bam! You know what I'm saying? Bam! I don't want to hit you very hard. Just go with the arm. Just reinforcing with it. Bam! It's all coming. It's right down in here. It's there. And that foot naturally comes, just like a pitcher would, coming off of a mound.
There you go, Scar. Bringing up one of the coaches and showing how to use your lower portion. I wonder. Go ahead and comment on what you thought there of Scar or of Harbaugh using one of the coaches in the crowd.
It's just more showing how he makes things simple. I can, that's how you reduce mental mistakes. Everything is simple. Talks about throwing a newspaper. He talks about throwing the punch, what the guy did differently when he threw the punch and followed through, and it's just simple. Yeah, that's the sign of a good teacher. You're trying to teach technique, to perfect technique. You make it so a kid can understand. And that's what's impressive. So if he teaches like that, darn well that he is mandating that all his assistant coaches are following that lead, that they're easy to understand, that they're talking about the small minor details that make a difference to perfecting technique.
Yeah, and Harbaugh now is he's 59 years old, so this would have been 20 some odd years ago, just over I don't know, 41 years old, in his second year there at San Diego, starting his coaching career. So relatively young, and all of the things that he had learned, he had mentioned at the beginning of this coaching clinic that he's been playing QB since he's been in the third grade, and then after he was done playing, he goes to the Raiders and quality control, and then he's a quarterback coach, and then starts his head coaching career. All of that, I wonder, in the last 5 years, the position has changed, where guys are throwing off platform. They're throwing against the grain. Their arm, there's a lot of side arm throwing now. It's the Patrick Mahomes effect. And we saw it with J.J. McCarthy in his first game ever as a Wolverine against, who was it? Western Michigan. He came in and he threw that one across the field. I don't know if he shot that. It was a 69-yard TD to Baldwin, the transfer. Amazing. First time we saw J.J. McCarthy, he's out there running around crazy, throwing that ball, using his arm talent. And I don't remember the exact quotes, but it'd be interesting to hear Harbaugh now from the fundamentalist standpoint of what he was teaching to how the quarterback position has evolved now, where he's, his particular quarterback, has a lot of the Patrick Mahomes effect in him.
Hey, Jim's a smart leader, smart CEO. He understands, just like any great leader, times change, new technology, new thought. He's not doing what he did at Stanford. Similar. That's why, I was trying to get that San Diego stuff, but he's foundationally, he has some, a lot of what he believes in, but he's tweaked. He's got spread. He's got speed and space blended in, and he's a guy that'll adjust and adapt to the changing times.
Yeah. I thought he's, when he was going through his coaches there, and and he mentioned Bo, and then he was mentioned Ditka, and this clinic was how to play quarterback, and he was like, well, Ditka not so much. He was more running the football. It was kind of like Bo. Bo and Ditka, you get the idea. Where if you've ever wondered, I don't think any Michigan fans don't wonder where he got the idea of let's run the ball and take the will away from the opponent. But if he didn't get it from the time he was with Schembechler, all that time that he would have been, he was even longer with Ditka in the pros, and Ditka was just like Schembechler, wanting to pound.
Yeah, but listen, he learned philosophically from terms of a team standpoint to be able to run the ball. But he had, I know Cam Cameron, and he was there at Michigan when he was Jim's coach. So he was well coached in the position, the art of the position of quarterback. So. We still threw it a little bit, and he was well coached in his techniques. And he mentions Cam. He gives him credit for teaching him some things. So yeah, Danny. Philosophically, it's Jim wants to run it, but you still got to teach those techniques on how to catch a football, even though you don't throw it as much as other people, or how to throw it, how to catch it, and all the other things with the pass game.
Scar, let's hear a little bit of what you thought about the Minnesota Golden Gophers, as we'll preview them. I took some snippets from Athlon and College Football News. Let me just read the first paragraph here, and then I'll give we'll hear your thoughts on the Gophers. And, they've won at least 9 games in each of their last 3 full seasons of play, and they've tied for second in the West Division in back-to-back years. So they're trying to get over the hump and play for the conference title. And Athlon says that might hinge on how well their new play caller, Matt Simon, elevates their quarterback, Ethan Kalimanis, in his first full season as the starter. So, Kaliak Manis, if I didn't say that right the first time. There's a lot of syllables in there. Kaliak Manis. So, what's your take from the Gophers, who Michigan hasn't seen since the opener of the pandemic season, that they'll play for the Little Brown Jug again?
Yeah, I think we play them the 6th game of the year. Yeah, we got the 3 non-league, then we got Rutgers, then we go to Nebraska, and then Minnesota. So I think PJ Fleck is a good coach. I think he's a perfect fit for Minnesota. They needed a guy that can recruit, and he's a good coach. He worked under a lot of good people. His foundation, his beliefs are very similar to Jim. He wants to run the ball. Okay, he's a Jim Tressel guy. He worked under Tressel at Ohio State. He worked under Jerry Kill. And they both want to run it. PJ wants to run it. He ran the football 70% of the time in the years he's been at in Minneapolis. So he wants to run the ball, okay? And he's got a quarterback that was a young kid. He had that 6-year kid there, forget his name, but he got hurt. And he found a way to put this young guy in there. And then when the other guy got healthy, he just said, to hell with it, I'm keeping the young kid in there to play for the future. I thought it was kind of unfair to that other kid.
Tanner Morgan.
Yeah, Tanner Morgan. But that's college football. He's like, hey, we're going to play for the future. And I think that's what he did. So this kid's got a lot of experience, this quarterback. He's a bigger kid. He's supposed to be a lot of the media are billing him as a good passer. The media is saying how they're going to throw the ball more. I ain't buying that. I ain't buying that at all. PJ wants to run the football. They got a huge offensive line. PJ believes in size. He'll recruit an inferior athletic kid who's big, or some people might not want that, but he has big. He's going to be one of the biggest teams out there. I think they're going to recruit, the difference between Michigan and them in terms of offensive line. PJ might not be able to get as many 4- and 5-star offensive linemen as Michigan. But they're not going to be small. They might be big, but they might not be as athletic. Danny, he's going to have 3-star huge guys. Michigan will have 4-star huge guys that are a little more athletic. So that's where I think we're going to be better than them in the offensive line. Is we're going to have the big guys, but we're going to be more athletic because he's trying to get those kids, but we're out recruiting them there. Same thing on with the front seven defensively. I think I see a slight edge. Michigan, I see he wants to have big people, but I just see a little edge athletically with the players we have in our front seven on defense. So it's kind of similar to my evaluation of Nebraska. But PJ really wants big size. He wants size. And for Michigan, when we go there, I got this written down. We better bring our run defense. You better be big, strong, and be able to stop that. Because you remember what they did against Michigan State last year, Danny, where they just physically abused them? You remember that game in East Lansing?
Yeah, I can't say I watched the first.
They just physically abused them.
Michigan State was lucky that they scored in that game.
You better be big and physical to play Minnesota. Do I think we can win the game? Hell yes, I do. I think we got better players. It'll be a sold-out game. It'll be a loud, tough crowd. But they're going to be – and I'll tell you right now, they're going to be the most difficult of our first 6 games, in my opinion, because I just think the PJ's now year 6 in the program. They know what they're doing. He's got 5 new coaches. So he fired coaches. I don't think PJ should be feeling any pressure, but he's got 5 new coaches. But they got a system that they've been perfecting now and running for for 6 years, and a game we can win, but there'll be a challenge.
Yeah, they look to get over the hump, see if they can play for the West Division title. There, they lose Mo Ibrahim, who was a real tough back. I was surprised he didn't get drafted, but they bring in a transfer from Sean Tyler from West Virginia or Western Michigan, I should say. That's where Fleck was before. Trey Potts, Bryce Williams. So those trio of backs try to take up for Ibrahim. And then they lose their center. And then Autumn Bell was a wide receiver who got hurt early, had a leg injury, but the year before he caught a half dozen touchdowns. And then they bring in a transfer, Kerry Crooms, again from Western Michigan. They also bring a kid in from Charlotte, and they got a pretty good tight end too. So they've got some pieces offensively. And last year, I don't know exactly. I didn't look to see how many players they had back. Their defense statistically was better than Michigan's, and Michigan was a top 6 defense. And the Minnesota had a hell of a year. I think they averaged, they gave up under 14 points per game of their 13. So they, I don't know if they went to that side of the ball and were replacing coaches, because they had an outstanding season over there.
Yeah, he's rotated. He's probably had his 3rd defensive coordinator since he's been there. He's brought different guys in. A lot of their good run. They're kind of like Iowa. They're going to have good stats defensively because they run the ball so much and they control the clock. And it's normally low-scoring games. It's not like Texas Tech, up and down fast. But so it's statistically, it's an advantage for people that run the football and slow the game down. That's one thing. I think we had a better defense than Minnesota. Okay, and I think we're going to go there with a better defense. But you better be 2 things. We better do 2 things when we go there. Okay, we better secure the darn football, and we better play great run defense.
13.8 points per game last year, which was in the top 5 in the country. But they lost 4 key players. A linebacker, an end, and 2 defensive backs, Terrell Smith and Jordan Howden, if you're keeping track at home. And you are. That's why you're listening to this, to know a little bit about the upcoming season. Well, Scar, you tipped your hand, or you teased who was going to be Michigan's toughest game about a minute or 2 ago, if people were listening really close. But now we want you to rank them. So that you said Minnesota is going to be Michigan's toughest game in their first 6 games that they play. And let's hear who you think it goes down. Minnesota's 1. Who's going to be the second toughest one?
Yeah, let me make sure I get everything covered as to why with Minnesota. Just, sold out on the road, big physical. That's why, they're PJ's been there. The players know what they're doing. They know the system. I got Nebraska as number 2 because it's on the road, and they got that darn quarterback who's been a starter for Georgia Tech. He's an athletic kid. I don't think Nebraska is as talented size athletically as Minnesota. I think they're just a slight difference there. We got better players than Nebraska. Their quarterback is the X factor. It's on the road, sold out. So I got Nebraska as the second toughest game to win. Rutgers is a well-coached team. They were here in Ann Arbor 2 years ago, Denny. We struggled. Remember how much we struggled in that game to stop them? He's got quarterbacks. We're going to cover Rutgers next week. I looked at their spring game. He's got guys. He's going to run the hell out of his quarterback. He's got some young guys that played a lot, and he's a good defensive coach. We had, good success last year, but I got them as the 3rd toughest game. Eastern Carolina is a well-coached team. I got them as the 4th most difficult game of the 3 non-league games. Their quarterback is gone. I'm glad that kid's gone. He was a good player. He graduated. They had a really, really outstanding, good quarterback. But they do a lot of things. The guy's a good coach. He's been around. I got Scott Loeffler and Bowling Green, the former Michigan quarterback. You got Morrison coaching the defense, the former Michigan linebacker. You got Soup Campbell coaching the receivers, all guys I know, trying to build Bowling Green. They're getting better. He wants to be physical. He's got Michigan bloodline. Scott Loeffler they want to be a physical offensive football team. We're going to slam their run game. We're going to force them to throw. We're going to hammer Bowling Green because we got bigger, better players. We got them at home. UNLV, Denny, is a first-year coach. The guy that he's a good coach. He was at Missouri. His name Barry Odom, and he was a defense coordinator last year at Arkansas. But this will be his first year. So, the advantage they have, we'll be able to see one game. So they'll have a game before we play them. So we'll get the scout to figure out what the heck they're going to do. Sometimes when you play a guy with, his first-year coach, you don't know what he's going to run, that first game of the year. So now we'll get to see him. But the guy's a good coach. they don't have the players that we got. They don't have a kid on their team that could start for Michigan. We got better players, so that's how I see it. But 6-0, man. We do things right. We develop depth, and it's good because we get ready. We work toward getting ready for those, for those last two tough ones there to when we go on the road in those first 6 games, Nebraska and Minnesota. So we got to develop depth and be ready for those last 2 of our first half of the year.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things. These last 2 years, Michigan, they've been fantastic with the winning the Big Ten and getting to the college football playoff. But we've talked about the game at Nebraska that they played 2 years ago, where they gave up 22 points in the third quarter, and they needed that big Hawkins strip at the end of the game to win it. I mean, that one was right down to the end. And the last time they played Rutgers, when Michigan was at home, Michigan was shut out in the second half, and they had 4 3-and-outs in the second half. And I can remember that on Michigan's first drive, they got it over the 50, and there was a 3rd and 13, and Harbaugh ran the ball. And people are like, are you kidding me? You're going to run the ball on a 3rd and 13. I think the idea was, hey, maybe they'd get 7-8 yards or something. They would go for it on 4th down, but they didn't, and I think they ended up kicking there, and everybody was groaning. And then there were 3 more 3-and-outs after that. So, yeah, and they had to depend on the defense. That one was closer than you would have liked.
Yeah, the guy's a good coach, man. He built that program one time. He was a head coach in the NFL. He plays good defense, and that game could be tougher than Nebraska. He's a damn good coach. Because we got him at home. I like that. I see that game as a different deal because we got him at home. But you can't screw around with any of those games.
Scar, here's some questions for you before we move on. And this one comes in from Mark, who says it's off the point and off schedule. But could Scar discuss the NCAA academic progress rate, APR, and what big transfer out means? Seems it goes close to 0 and way under the NCAA 50 minimum requirement. Do you know anything about the academic?
Well, I believe the academic progress rate is, you're evaluated on how well your players are doing academically. And if you don't achieve a certain outcome, it affects your ability to do certain things. And I'm not totally updated on what it prevents you from doing. Like, I don't know if anything was an issue with, bringing the North Carolina kid where Juwan faced issues with that. I don't know. But I don't know if it's the kind of question I'd like to research and have an answer next week. I'm not thoroughly updated on it, but it's annual percentage rate. You want to be high there. Okay. We want to be able to, when a parent comes in and we're recruiting a kid at Michigan, and you want Jim Harbaugh and our coaches to be able to say, look, our guys graduate. Our guys are getting grades. They're taking class. They're in majors that they want to be in. They're not majoring in eligibility. And our guys are graduating. So that's about all I could say in response to that.
Yeah, I can't add very much there either, although just off the top of my head, since Harbaugh has been there, Michigan seems to have been doing well, football players in the classroom. Because I remember previous to this, 2 years, people were mentioning like the APR.
Well, Benny, I don't cut you off. Wasn't that how they decided some of the bowl games late in the year when there were some teams that dropped out? Didn't they they looked at that, I believe, where if
they weren't bowl eligible, they did look at it. That's right.
Yeah, they looked at when they had their final selection of teams to fill those spots, they looked at that to determine who they were going to plug in there. So it was advantageous.
That's how Rice was able to play in a bowl.
Right. So it's advantageous, and it's good that people are coaches are emphasizing that.
Yeah. Here's M&M asking about a coaching clinic and saying, why don't they have targets throwing to get consistent measure of accuracy? Sure, receivers move, but throwing where you want to seems so basic, being able to do it.
I bet if we would have listened to more of that presentation, Jim would have talked about aiming points and targeting. I didn't listen to the whole thing, but I guarantee you, if as thorough as he is about holding a ball and taking a snap from center, if you listen to that video, I guarantee you, he is talking about, what he wants his quarterbacks aiming for. I remember as a young coach listening to Bill Walsh, I heard, who was it? Who was teaching that? I think it was Sue Campbell when Eric was at Michigan. I worked the camp with Eric, and Bill Walsh talked about the aiming point is the helmet, the face of the receiver. A lot of people think that you're aiming for the numbers, but Bill Walsh's philosophy was, okay, if I aim for the face and it's a little bit high, it's a catchable ball. If it's a little bit low, it's a catchable ball. You follow me? So
Sure.
his thinking was, so I remember that one coaching point that Bill Walsh was then, I heard it from Eric Campbell at the Michigan camp. So that's the way I coached it. That's the way we coached it, was the face is the aiming point. So believe me, all that stuff is coached in detail by any coach worth a darn.
Yeah, and if you look hard enough or you watch enough the football, you'll see some of those quarterback competitions where some of them they're dipping the football in chalk and they're throwing after some stationary targets and some moving targets to see where they end up in scoring and everything. And all that stuff's great, Mark, but you got to get out there and see a quarterback. There's a difference between throwing a ball and just zipping it in on a line and just banging it off, some target, to somebody that can really deliver a catchable pass with a nice, you have the right amount of, certainly you want to be accurate, but you have to have the right amount of loft and everything that goes into that to be able to throw that catchable football. I thought Matt Stafford at the beginning of his career, as good as arm as anybody, but he didn't have the most catchable football at first. He worked on that and he got a lot better. But that's what I think. Some of those guys get in there and they can throw the ball the length of the field. They can, sit there on one knee at the 50 and hit the upright. But you get them out there and throw to a wide receiver, and they're throwing it on a line, and the guy's here and going zipping by there. You got to be able to throw a catchable pass too.
Yeah, sometimes you got to throw it over a linebacker. Sometimes you got to drill it in there. And, the good quarterbacks know when they got to adjust their throw. And, Andrew Luck was a guy that I remember everything he threw seemed to be so catchable. Then a couple other things. I see Chris Jenkins is up to 309 pounds. Saw that on our website. So he's getting bigger and thicker. If you're going to play between a guard and a tackle in the Big Ten, that's 600 some pounds of dude. You better be big. So he's getting bigger, stronger, and that was good to see that. We got to have big. We call that a 3 technique. He plays a lot of the 3 technique, which is between the guard and the tackle, and he'll play a little 1 technique also between the center and the guard. You can't have small guys in there.
Well, and that's why when he came in. And, I think he was weighed, 235 pounds. And everybody's like, this guy's going to be a defensive end. Well, they looked at his dad. Was it Cullen Jenkins, who was a defensive tackle in the pros? And, and his dad was, 320 pounds or whatever. And they're like, this guy's got room. This kid's got room to grow. Sometimes you look at the daddy.
Trust me. All the time they look at mom and dad. When those guys are coming in recruiting, and they see mom and dad, they know that that's what they're going to get in 3-4 years, man. So, the genetics, man, you can't coach genetics.
No, that's right. That's a good CP coaching point.
That's right. You can't coach height, and you can't coach speed, and you can't coach athletic ability. It used to bother me as a coach because I got these kids that make all these tackles and do all this, and they still want to look at the measurables that I can't coach.
Coach Scar, I'm going to ask you a few more things. I want to recommend you mentioned Amazing Blue Review. I'm mentioning it for everyone out there. Why not join up? Give us a shot. All the latest on Michigan football, basketball, recruiting, transfer portal. Go to michigan.rivals today. We'll see you there on the Den with Scar reference, where he saw the Jenkins story all day, all night there on the posting board. Michigan.rivals.com. Scar, today is the last day of May, and I know you're probably, looking at your landing points when you're doing these explosive runs and jumping up on those platforms like you're doing at the gym, to really work on your explosion that, you don't want to lose any muscle mass as you get older. But what about the upcoming next 2 months? Pretty big recruiting wise for the Maize and Blue, both June and July, starting tomorrow.
It's great. That's one of the great changes in college football is that, this is the primary months of recruiting, and they can take an official visit and they don't have to worry about school. They're not playing basketball. Back in my day, I was playing basketball. You want to leave on a Friday and come back on a Sunday. You got to miss games at times. I really like that this is the prime months, June and July. And you've got these one-day camps. Michigan's got 3 of them coming up. Believe me, there's a lot of guys that Michigan's on the fence with, and they want to evaluate them. They want to see them run. They want to see them lift. They want to see them do drills. And a lot of those kids are going to be coming up to these camps, to the Michigan camps, and finalizing some things. So I just wanted to point out that these are crucial months. It's better for college football that these kids aren't they're taking their official visits. It's not disrupting their academics. It's not disrupting playing basketball, and they can enjoy and spend time. What they can't see is a real, they don't see the campus up and running full go. There's some kids up on campus taking college classes, or taking summer classes, but it's good, and we got to be good. You got to be good. These are key times of year. So from a recruiting standpoint, your coach has got to be up and running. It ain't no vacation time, June and July, as a college football coach.
Good stuff. I love it. All right. Well, I am not going to see you tomorrow. Scar, you mentioned basketball. You got the NBA Finals that will tip up tomorrow night in Denver. The Miami Heat with Duncan Robinson, they've been amazing as an 8 seed, just the second 8 seed ever to make the NBA Finals. The previous 8 seed was the New York Knicks. So Eric Spoelstra's team and what they're doing with all those undrafted, they have 3 other undrafted players besides Duncan Robinson that are huge contributors, like Caleb Martin and Max Strus and Gabe Vincent on their team. It's a really remarkable story, the Miami Heat. Do you give them much of a shot against the Denver Nuggets?
Hey, they just keep finding a way to win. Danny, I coach football and I coach basketball. And, basketball teams, you need guys that are willing to be offensive linemen. You role players that will defend and rebound and do the ugly things. And I think Miami has a nice little mix of that. But I actually had a big bet. I took them the other day to win Game 7. The guys were talking, they got no chance. I said, man, they just beat them twice over there. They won twice in Boston. Why can't they do it again? I took them -2.5, paying almost 3-1 on my money. I'd like Miami first quarter -1.5, paying 2-1. That's a winner. First quarter, Miami -1.5, paying 2-1. I don't know if they're going to win the quarter, Denny. But I think we got a 50-50 chance. I look at the bets that are like, if I think I got a 45% chance of winning, you're going to give me 2-1 on my money. That's why I think that's a good bet.
I was hoping you were going to say, because, the Heat played 7 and the Nuggets, they'll have a little first quarter rust because they've been waiting and Miami has been playing and they don't have quite the layoff that, Miami would more hit the ground running and it would take a little while for Denver to get going. I would have said that, but you're looking at the money part. But I also think that might play into a first quarter Miami.
Well, you got to be smart. The Denver coach is, he knows and understands. And, you obviously, they probably had some good, tough scrimmages. Maybe, Yeah,
but I've seen it a million times, the rest versus rust. And, teams can go over there and say that they're playing at a high level and they're getting after it, but you just can't simulate it. I mean, that's why the Tigers in 2012, it's why they got swept by the Giants. And in 2006, it's why they lost in 5 to the Cardinals. The Cardinals were going 7 games. The Giants were. The Tigers were sweeping, and they had to sit around for a week and a half. You can talk about going live and everything else.
I get it. You make a good point. One last thing, though, about recruiting. we're in Ohio. We're the real deal in Ohio, Denny. We were recruiting 4-star kids, 5-star kids in Youngstown. We're in the game for that Youngstown kid. And that's when that's when you know Michigan is really, when we talked about it, man. When we can go back into Ohio and get the big time recruits that the Buckeyes are recruiting, that's a good sign. And we're in there. We're in Youngstown.
I'm with you on that. There's Scar back in his coaching days. You got the whistle around here, ready to go. It won't be long that those high school guys will be out there, you know, and they'll be getting through some 2-a-days. Scar, great job. I can't wait to talk with you next week.
All right, Denny, go blue.
There he is, Jim Scarcelli.